Hello everyone, and welcome to Fictional Vortex. So we are back with an interesting series on what if Naruto become a monster and awakens Hellsing ability. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Kushina Uzumaki stared, her once vibrant red hair flat as rain drizzled on her as her empty dull violet eyes looked at the grave that shouldn't exist. Here lies Naruto Uzumaki. Only 4 years old. Taken before his time. Your family will always miss you, it read, and it made her want to destroy the lie etched in the stone as she dug up the first shovelful of dirt. I promise, I will make it all better, Kushina thought as she continued to dig. This time I'll be a better mother and love you like I should have, she thought as painful memories of her favoring her other child Mito flashed in her mind, making her grip the shovel even tighter. Why did I favorite her over all else? I ignored my baby and didn't even think twice, she berated herself as she fell to her knees, her body still weak from the time spent locked away in her baby's room in grief, but she quickly pushed on and continued to dig. The image and scene played in her mind every time she closed her eyes. Her walking to his room to wake him up for breakfast, him not answering so she opened it herself, the overall bareness of his room, showing just how much he was ignored, before she saw her son sleeping on his bed. She didn't know why, she only then noticed how skinny he was when he got to the point she was able to see his ribs. It made her heart drop in the memory of how cold he felt, unbreathing as he laid there before she noticed her baby was dead and the scream of fear she let out afterwards. For nearly the last 3 years, after having to watch her baby be lowered into the grave she was digging up, she had confined herself to his old room. She felt broken as she often tightly clung to a photo of him never leaving his room except to go to the bathroom. She barely even ate as she was too broken from causing the death of her child. She didn't remember much of what happened over the years except Minato had seemingly ordered the death of the Uchiha who wished to rebel. She wasn't sure if Makoto was a part of the members killed, but she didn't care if she was. She probably wanted to steal him from me. Wasn't content with her 2 sons, so she tried to take my baby as well, she thought with a glare as Makoto was always too close to her baby, trying to take her role as mother away. It was then, a few months ago, after overhearing of how Orochimaru became a deserter after all of his experiments, the fact he had perfected the Edo Tensei sparked an idea in her. She could turn everything back and return her baby to her. She spent at least a few months secretly scouring the Uzumaki Seal archives before she came across everything she needed to put it together, and that alone took a few months to complete given the complexity of it all and the research she had to do. And as her shovel hit something solid she hurried and uncovered the coffin, ready to put her work to use. Though, even with determination, she couldn't hold herself back from vomiting as she remembered the terrible state of her baby's body. Her baby's body, as she opened it, was preserved perfectly due to the seals inside it and still showed how terrible it had been when he died. It's okay, Naru-chan. Mommy is here now and is going to fix everything. We'll be together again soon, she whispered out as she stroked his cheek before gently lifting him up and carrying him in her arms. The site she had chosen wasn't too far away, and in all her years this was the most complicated and detailed seal she had ever drawn. The ink itself was a mixture of the blood of an Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki, as well as hero water from the village hidden in the waterfall and the ink naturally made by the Hachibi itself. The components for it were nigh impossible to get her hands on, but being the wife of the Yondaime she knew where it was all located and could take it without anyone noticing. And the seal itself, while not active, still hummed with power due to the powerful ingredients that made it up. As she laid her baby down in the center she ignored the muffled sounds of screams coming from the 10 young children around the seal array. Soon, so soon, everything will be alright and I'll be a good mommy this time like I should have been. I promise, sweetie, she muttered as she kissed his forehead before glaring at the kids around the circle. You will do best not to disrupt it, I won't let anything ruin this, she hissed out, glaring venomously at the squirming sacrifices needed for it, her chakra chains already holding the kids down. The kids were ranging from 6 to 9, all taken from orphanages from around Konoha. No one ever noticed them missing or seemed to care. She had taken them, all of them, and locked them away in the old Senju complex. She had also been particular to ensure none of them died as she needed every single one of them. She continued to ignore them as she walked out of the array and summoned what left over of the Kyuubi's chakra that she had and poured it into the seal. Every bit of knowledge she read from Orochimaru and Hiriko's notes, Tsunade's medical research, and original notes of the Edo Tensei were all for this, and as she watched the seal activate she had to bring herself to look away as the light was blinding. As it died down, a smile quickly grew on her face as her baby started to glow and float, not even noticing how the kids screamed as the disintegrated into flowing blood that was absorbed by Naruto. She continued to watch, overjoyed that it was seemingly working before her baby started to scream as his body grew, started to rip and tear, only to heal itself. Naru-chan. No, I don't want my Naru-chan to hurt. She clutched her head in fear as his screams grew louder, red lightning arcing off him as she stared, afraid before her baby flowed back down to the ground. The second the seal died down and allowed her to enter it, she dashed to her baby's side, quickly noticing his once blonde hair had turned blood red and his whiskers had faded away. Naru-chan, oh baby, mommy is sorry for making you hurt like that, she cried as she held her baby close to her, petting his hair and kissing the top of his head before her fear was erased as she felt her baby start to breath. She couldn't hold her tears of joy back as she cradled her baby close to her, petting his head as he slept. Mommy is here. Mommy won't ever let you go, she said before she tensed up as numerous Anbu surrounded the site. No, I won't let you take my baby, Kushina yelled, her chains bursting from her back as she refused to have him taken away from her. Kushina. We are here to help. A familiar voice spoke out to her as she watched the Anbu part and Danzo, one of Konoha's elders, walk towards her. Danzo. What do you mean? How did you know I was here? My barrier should have hidden everything, Kushina said as she held Naruto closer to her, ready to defend her baby against any of them that dare take him away. Your barrier does block all chakra from being sensed, but whatever Naruto unleashed was not chakra. I had my route following you, so that is why we arrived so quickly, but others are not far behind with what was sent out, the bandaged war hawk said as he stared down at her. If you do not hurry with this you will be found out, Danzo said as Kushina looked up at the man, down to her sleeping son, and then back to him. Fine, but if you try and take my Naru-chan away I swear I will end you, she hissed out as Danzo merely nodded, seemingly unaffected by her anger. I have no intentions of doing that, now come. Do you need help getting up? Danzo asked as Kushina shook her head and stood up, holding her now 7-year-old looking son before he looked to the two Anbu at his side. You two stay behind and destroy the seal. There must not be any decipherable portion of it. Also destroy Kushina's barrier. We must not have anything left that might point suspicion her way, he ordered as they nodded before he motioned for her to follow. Their pace, while quick, wasn't too fast for her to keep up with. Get in, Danzo said as he motioned to the tunnel entrance before him. My Anbu will lead you to my headquarters. There will be beds for you to lay your child and wait for me to return as I undoubtedly will be called in to consult, Danzo said as Kushina nodded hesitantly. She wasn't sure why Danzo of all people was helping her, but with the danger of her baby being taken away from her she had to trust in him. She didn't waste any more time as she followed the Anbu into the tunnel, the entrance quickly collapsing behind them. After countless twists and turns she found herself in an underground mansion of sorts that was embedded in the cavern they were in. Please follow us, Kushina. We will show you to a room, the Root Anbu said, snapping her out of her thoughts as she nodded and continued to follow them. The room they brought her to was quite large with a nice large bed, allowing her lay her baby down and tuck him in as he was still asleep. I will assume you wish to stay by his side? The Anbu asked as she nodded and glared at them. I refuse to leave my baby's side, she hissed out as they nodded, as if expecting that response. Well, we'll prepare food for him as well as you and ready a medic to check him when he wakes. We will be outside if you need us and we will not allow anyone other than Danzo-sama to enter, they added before the two of them left her. Kushina, now that she was alone, couldn't wipe the overjoyed smile off her face as she pet her baby's head as he slept soundly. I have my baby back and I won't let anything take him away, she whispered to herself as she sat on the ground beside the bed, resting her head on the bed to allow her to watch over her baby. Back with Danzo. Danzo frowned as he seemingly just arrived at the site to see Minato staring at the site before him with his apprentice Kakashi by his side. What are you doing here, Danzo? Minato asked as he looked over his shoulder at him. I am here for the same reason you are. I felt that dark energy explode out and came to investigate. I was worried for what it was as I have not felt something that dark since the Kyuubi attack and even that paled in comparison to what was felt, Danzo said as while it did when he was in the presence of the newly revived Naruto he didn't give off any more energy like it. The grounds here look like they used to have a seal painted on it, but it's too broken to ever hope of seeing the makeup of it. This feels something Orochimaru might be behind. Though coming back to Konoha after the trouble he went through escaping seems odd, Kakashi said as he stood up from the destroyed ground and looked back up at Minato. Hokage-sama, after scouring the area we have discovered a grave at the nearby graveyard had been dug up and, the Anbu hesitated, making Minato frown. Whose grave was it? Minato asked, as if this was Orochimaru's work. A dug-up grave could mean Edo Tensei in the future. It was, your son's. His body and coffin have been taken, the Anbu reported, causing Minato to widen his eyes as he looked at the Anbu with an angered glare. I want every Anbu searching every inch of this village. If there is any trace of him, I want him found and brought in. I want my son's body returned, he ordered as the Anbu nodded and disappeared. Stealing your son's body seems quite odd. Do you know if he was the inheritor of Kushina's chains? As if he was, it could explain his reason to take his body, Danzo asked as Minato looked away with a frown. I don't know, Minato said as Danzo held his calm visage and kept from narrowing his eyes. While the cause of Naruto's death was unknown to the public, he, the other elders, Tsunade, and a few other high-ranking clan heads all knew the cause of the boy's death was neglect. To lose a child due to your incompetence, while broke Kushina, didn't have much effect on Minato. Danzo had his ideas of why, but not enough proof to solidify the thoughts into claims. Well, in case Orochimaru knew, and we did not, we need to get his body back even more. The power to control a Biju or Jinchuriki is not something we need that man to possess, Danzo said as Minato nodded. I'll call a meeting come my ANBU's results in their search. You're dismissed now, Minato said as Danzo nodded and walked off, eager to return to see the results of Kushina's endeavors, as whatever caused the energy he felt was bound to be enthralling. Naruto. Mindscape. As Naruto opened his eyes, he was immediately confused as he found himself somewhere entirely unfamiliar and had no memories of how he got here. His surroundings seemed like a destroyed city. Tall buildings toppled and burned around him, and some weird balloon crashed and burning nearby. Hello? Is anyone there? He called out, a bit afraid as he didn't know how he got here. Also, our master Awakens. The one who bound my power to him and commands it. A female voice spoke out as Naruto turned to see a girl walking his way with a large excited smile. The girl was petite and slender with straight black hair as she wore a seemingly all-white suit and gloves with a fuzzy white hat on her head. Her eyes were dark red as he noticed her teeth were fanged. Don't be afraid, dear master. I only wish to meet you, she said as her smile grew. Arms spread out before Naruto cowered and closed his eyes before he heard the sound of someone hitting another. Don't be like that, you fool. Anyone is going to be afraid when you walk towards them like that, showing off your fangs like that, a man said with an odd accent as Naruto opened his eyes to see a very tall man standing beside the girl, who was now rubbing her head as he seemingly hit her. The man had short spiky gold hair with blue eyes behind round glasses and scruffy light facial hair. He wore a gray long jacket, a pair of white gloves, dark gray undershirt with a blue trim, and gray pants. The most noticeable thing he wore was a large metal T of sorts hanging from a necklace around his neck. Why are you even a girl right now? The man asked as the girl shrugged her shoulders with a smirk. It was the last form I consciously took before I faded from existence and took you all with me. It's stuck and now I can't change unless he wishes me to, but I think this suits me best with a male master, the girl said before the man sighed and turned towards Naruto, his hard eyes softening as he crouched down to his level. You'll have to excuse Alucard for scaring you, she's just excited, I guess. I'm Alexander Anderson, but you can call me Father Anderson or just Anderson if you wish. I'm sure you are very confused, but don't worry, we aren't here to hurt you, Anderson said, offering a hand towards him. Naruto nodded as he gently accepted his hand and let the man help him back up. Where are we, and how did I get here? Naruto asked as the girl Alucard smiled and dusted off her hat before putting it back on. I believe this is my area of expertise, Anderson, she said as Anderson narrowed his eyes but nodded. You are the reason we are here after all, he said before Alucard stepped forward and cleared her throat. We are in your mind, which right now is the image of the area of which I was in last. We specifically, she said pointing to the three of them, are here in your mind because your dear mother, our master, somehow was able to draw me and the others here into you while I was flickering outside of existence. You see, boy, you were dead and my power brought you back. she said as Naruto frowned. I died. So that's what that really bad pain was, Naruto mumbled as he stared at the floor, tears welling in the corners of his eyes before he quickly looked up. Wait. You mentioned my mommy. She saved me, he asked, eyes lighting up as Alucard nodded with a smile as she found the small boy to be rather cute and was looking forward to him being her master. She did, and was able to bless you with Alucard's powers as well as the others who are also here like myself, Anderson said as he ruffled his hair. But don't worry about it, when you wake up we'll help explain things to your mother, as you will need help controlling everything. Especially that mangy little were-cat's power who is thankfully being held back by Alucard for now, Anderson added while he muttered the last part more to himself. For now just wake up, your mom is waiting for you. We'll talk more later, Alucard said as the world around him started to get darker and he felt himself waking up. Real-world Naruto found himself somewhere new and not in his room or anywhere familiar as he opened his eyes before he sat up and quickly found himself being hugged by someone. Naru-chan. My baby, you're awake. Mommy is so sorry for what happened to you. Please forgive your terrible mommy. I promise I won't let anything hurt you anymore. His mom cried as she hugged and held him close and rocked gently with him in her arms. Naruto couldn't keep himself from crying as he hugged her back. Mommy, I was so sad. Why you kept forgetting about me. It was so lonely. Naruto cried as Kushina moved to sit on the edge of the bed and pulled him onto her lap to hug him closer, kissing the top of his head as she kept crying. I've been a terrible mommy, but I promise I'm here now. I will never forget you ever again. I will love you like a mommy should, Kushina said as he looked up at her, sniffling as he wiped his tears. Promise? He asked as she nodded, looking him in the eyes as she gave him the most serious look she could with tears running down her face. I swear, my Naru-chan, Kushina said as Naruto smiled and hugged her again, making her clutch him tightly against her before the door opened. Ah, good, he's awake, Danzo said as he walked in, a doctor and another with a tray of food at his sides. Nice to meet you, Naruto. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm Danzo Shimura, an elder of the village, Danzo said as Naruto smiled at him, unknowingly showing off his new fangs to the three men as the one carrying the food set it down on a nearby table that was in the room. Nice to meet you. Are you friends with my mommy? Naruto asked as his mom wiped off his tears as well as her own while Danzo nodded. You could say that, as I helped get her and you here to safety, he said before he motioned to the doctor to his side. I know you just woke up and are enjoying being with your mother again, but you've been sick for a while, and I felt it best if this kind doctor were to look you over, Danzo said as Kushina held him tighter. I wasn't sick, I was dead, Naruto said with a slight frown, shocking everyone in the room as Kushina nervously shook as she held onto him. Why do you say that? Kushina asked as Naruto looked up at her. Because I remember dying and Alucard told me, Naruto said, getting Danzo to frown a bit in thought as Kushina frowned more in worry. Who is Alucard? She asked as a chuckle sounded out in the room. I guess that is my cue to reveal myself, a voice said as everyone watched Naruto's shadow extend out in front of him before a woman rose up from within it. Greetings, it is an honor to meet you, master, Alucard said as she bowed and looked up at Kushina with a smile. Danzo held up a hand as he stopped his shinobi from attacking. Attacking won't do anything as, while held back, I can feel that same dark energy radiating from her, Danzo said as merely looking at the girl all of his shinobi instincts were screaming at him to retreat. Ah, smart man, Alucard said as she stood up and smiled before Kushina cleared her throat as she held onto Naruto tighter to protect him should she need to. Excuse me, but who are you and what do you mean by master? Kushina asked, her instincts telling her the girl was powerful, but the way she acted told her she wasn't an enemy. Excuse me, where are my manners? I am Alucard and I am the power you summoned and bound into your son to revive him from the grave, making your son and you my master, Alucard said as she ruffled Naruto's hair, making him smile a bit and Kushina tense up at first but relax once she saw the girl meant no harm. You are what I summoned. I only intended to revive my baby, Kushina said with a frown. While accidental, whatever you did to revive your son, it asked for a catalyst, my master, and it drew me in as a sort of defibrillator to start him back up and return his soul to his body, Alucard said as the process of being bound to and sealed inside the boy was rather amazing. It reminded her a bit when Abraham Van Helsing bound her after he defeated her when he bound her with a stake, but much more powerful. Also you called me and Naruto your master, does that mean you serve him and will keep him safe? She asked as his safety ranked highest among all else. Of course, my power will allow him never to die and defend himself and protect you from any harm that dares try to befall you. Naruto is my master due to him housing my power, but you are both of our masters due to being the one to make the seal, Alucard said as Danzo hummed in thought. If I may ask, what is your power exactly? The old man asked, making Alucard look towards him, not answering before she looked at Kushina, who nodded as she too wanted to know. My power is that of a true vampire, Alucard said as she kneeled before Naruto and poked at his fangs as he smiled at her, making him giggle a bit, which made her in turn smile as well. He lacks the weaknesses of normal vampires and only requires human blood to survive. The blood of his master, or in this case mother, must be his first taste to bind the contract, which right now isn't fully active, Alucard said, pointing to the back of her white glove which bore an empty red circle on the back of it before Naruto frowned and looked up at his mom. Mommy, what does she mean? He asked as Kushina pet her son's head. If this was what she had to do to ensure her baby was safe and by her side, then she more than was willing to. Does this mean I can't cook him food? Kushina asked as making homemade meals for her baby was one thing she was looking forward to. I guess I can hold back his aversion and lack of taste towards normal food, as I will agree that a mother's cooking shouldn't be missed, Alucard said before she looked up at Kushina. But his first taste of blood has to be from you still, and he will need blood regularly, she added as Kushina nodded. Danzo, hand me a kunai please, Kushina said as Danzo, who was silently watching as it wasn't his place to be a part of the talks between Kushina and the being she had summoned. If you wish, as I am curious as well to see this, Danzo said as he held out a kunai to her, its handle pointed out towards her before she took it from him. You swear to me you will protect my son above all else, Kushina said as she gently set her son on the bed before she stood before him. Of course, I am a monster of my word to the core, and when bound I cannot and will not rebel, Alucard said as she watched Kushina slice her palm, making Naruto widen his eyes in worry before his mom's smile put him at ease. It's okay Naru-chan, just drink up, Kushina said as she opened her hand to reveal the blood, a bit surprised by how entranced Naruto was when he saw it before he held her hand with his. Everyone in the room watched as the second his tongue lapped up the first of the blood, a red aura surrounded Naruto while Alucard smiled massively. And with that the contract is sealed. My service is under your command, Alucard said as wisps of red energy gathered towards the back of the girl's hands as Naruto continued to lick up Kushina's blood. The empty circle quickly evolved into a mix of the Uzumaki swirl and 8 trigram seal as Naruto, seemingly starving, continued lapped up the blood of his mother. The red aura only continued to grow around Naruto as everyone but Kushina were being pressed under an oppressive force. Just what did Kushina create? Danzo wondered to himself as he watched Naruto's finish up as he looked up at his mom, his red eyes glowing and shining in the now darkened room. That was really tasty, mommy, Naruto said with a happy smile, making Kushina crouch down in front of him and stroke his cheek with a smile. She was happy to make her baby smile like this, but her attention shifted over as she looked over to Alucard, who seemed to be smiling and enjoying something. Oh my, your blood is quite delicious. It has a flavor to it that feels so rich and savory, Alucard said as she stared down the vampire. You better be a being of your word. I want no harm to befall my baby, Kushina said as she could not handle losing her baby ever again. I swear on everything I am that myself and the others will ensure that no harm befalls your son and that he can defend himself to protect you as well, Alucard said as Kushina and Danzo rose an eyebrow at her. Others, how many things are within my baby? Kushina asked, worried about him being potentially controlled or manipulated by the others. There are, including myself, 5 other souls inhabiting inside your son. Originally when I first entered him there were over 1 million that got pulled from me and into Naruto, but he burnt through those to heal his body that had been dead for a few years and to grow a bit. In the end there is only 4 other souls that were left besides me. They all though are bound by the same bindings that I am, she explained as a voice scoffed. You pulled me along with you when I expected to go on to meet my lord in heaven. Now I'm stuck with you and bound to help the wee lad as well, a man's voice as everyone watched another being rise up from Naruto's shadow. This time it was a rather tall man who was glaring towards Alucard but lessened his stern look as he looked towards her and especially Naruto. "Hello ma'am and hello again Naruto," the man said as Naruto smiled. "Hi Mr. Anderson. This is my mommy," Naruto said excitedly as Kushina looked up at the tall man. "It is a pleasure to meet you and as much as I would love to talk I think we should save this for another day," Anderson said as Kushina frowned. "And why is that?" she asked as Anderson pointed to Naruto who was struggling to stay awake. "The boy is tired as he's exhausted from the ordeal of coming back from the dead and making the contract. He needs to eat some and lay down. I expect you all grabbed his coffin," Anderson asked as he looked over to Danzo who nodded, a bit surprised to be addressed by an inhabitant of Naruto. "We didn't want any evidence to endanger Kushina so my men grabbed it," he said as Alucard nodded. "I don't think he'll need to sleep in it as he has tasted human blood but keep it close to him," she said as Danzo nodded and looked to the man who brought in the food. "Go retrieve it and bring it in here, have another person help you," Danzo said as the man nodded and hurried off. "I also think it's time you return home Kushina," Danzo said making Kushina narrow her eyes. "I will not leave my baby behind. I swore I wouldn't," she yelled before Anderson stopped her from charging at the man by placing his hand in her way. "From what I figure he's saying to do it to keep him safe, right?" Anderson asked as Danzo nodded. "We will talk much more soon but if Minato notices you are gone for too long or acting weirdly it'll make you be put under suspicion and possible surveillance that could endanger both you and Naruto. I will have my root agents following you discreetly where you can check up on Naruto's status through them and visit at nights though tunnels entrances made through Earth release. You can even visit during the day if you can ensure a shadow clone won't be noticed," Danzo said as Kushina's anger diminished before there was a tugging at her pant leg, causing her to look down at Naruto who smiled up at her. "I don't want mommy to get in trouble, just promise you won't forget me again," Naruto said, a bit afraid of his mommy who had just returned to him forgetting him again. "I will never do that to you ever again sweetie. I swear," Kushina said as she crouched down in front of him, cupping his cheeks as she shook a bit before she calmed herself down and kissed his forehead. "We will also be looking after him," Alucard said as she pointed to herself and Anderson. The boy will be safe with us. None of the souls inside the boy will allow harm to befall him," Anderson said as Kushina frowned but nodded. "Fine but only after I get to have a meal with my baby then tuck him in bed," Kushina said as Naruto smiled happily and hugged his mom. Neither of them cared for anything else at the moment, only that they had each other again. As Kushina headed home, after enjoying a dinner with her baby, she still couldn't help but fret over him. She had even started to cry as she tucked him into bed after kissing his forehead due to how sweet he looked smiling in his sleep. It wasn't until both Alucard and Anderson assured her again, for what seemed like the 100th time, that they would protect him that she brought herself to leave. She was warned by Danzo to act as she had been which thankfully while she had shown signs of recovering to others she also spent the last few months visiting Naruto's grave at night so her returning late wouldn't be odd. She also made sure to dig up and do the ritual after her usual visiting hours as for the first few weeks that she had first ventured out she had been followed by Anbu before they stopped following her altogether. Also she doubted Minato would bring up Naruto's grave being robbed to her in fear of causing her to relapse to her secluded self but he would make an excuse to get her to stop given the state she left it in. He rarely ever mentioned Naruto in the house so she should be okay. As she entered the house she didn't try and hide her return, as she never did, and after sensing around found only Mito sleeping in her room and figured Minato to still be out trying to track down the energy Naruto let out and find a trail on the grave robbing culprit. "I hope you sleep well Naru-chan, your mommy will come and visit you soon," Kushina thought as she made her way back up to Naruto's old room as she still liked it best in there. Naruto's mindscape. Naruto watched Alucard, as he sat by Anderson's side, slowly rebuild the city around them as she was able to settle in, as she put it. She was able to interact more with the mindscape apparently after he drank his mother's blood. "You do know the kid will change the scenery himself in due time," Anderson said as Alucard nodded. "I know but I figured I might as well tidy up for the time being," Alucard said as she continued to mend buildings, letting Naruto watch as rubble floated up and pieced itself back together. Naruto continued to watch before he perked up and looked off to his side, making Alucard smirk at as she looked to where he was staring at. Oh, seems like the others are finally deciding to visit us, she said as two figures made their way over a tower of rubble before dropping down. The first was a rather young-looking and tall woman with incredibly long hair that went down to her knees with a lock of it sticking out and curling in front of her. She was rather skinny and lanky with blue eyes and freckled cheeks and a pair of glasses that sat on her nose. She wore a dark blue-purple suit, a dark pink dress shirt, a green tie, white gloves, and black shoes. In her hand was something that Naruto didn't recognize, but his mind told him it was a musket. The woman looked rather nervous as she walked towards them with the other woman beside her. The other woman was different, not as tall or skinny, while she wore an odd black outfit. The outfit consisted of a black robe, an odd black hat of sorts, a white scarf, white gloves, white stockings held with a garter belt, and black boots. She had black hair that was a bit visible under her hat and a pair of glasses. She wasn't as tall as the first girl and also not as lanky, with a better figure than the first. She also held something in her hand which he was able to fully realize as a sword, having seen his mother hold and use one in the past. Naruto, meet Rip Van Winkle and Yumiko Takagi, two more souls that inhabit you, Alucard said as Yumiko rushed over to Anderson. Father Anderson, are you all right? Yumiko asked, her voice soft as Anderson patted her head. I am fine, Yumiko. I am just sorry to have heard of your passing by the hands of Walter, Anderson said with a bit of a glare as Alucard waved him off. I got Walter back for it, and if I didn't, I'm more than sure that other brat of yours did. You should greet your new master first, Yumiko, Alucard chided as Anderson nodded and pointed towards Naruto. We might have been dragged into this situation, but we will make the best of it. This young boy has been gifted with Alucard's powers and I am determined to make him grow up right, Anderson said before Yumiko smiled at Naruto and bowed her head. Greetings, Naruto, it is very nice to meet you. I hope we get along. You can call me Yumiko or Sister Yumiko, Yumiko said with a soft smile as she fixed her glasses while Naruto nodded. Nice to meet you, Yumiko. I hope we get along, Naruto said, a bit nervous as he hid behind Anderson, making the large man chuckle at and ruffle Naruto's hair. You should introduce yourself as well, Winkle. Just because I can't devour your soul doesn't mean I can't lock you away like I am with the Werkat, Alucard said, sending a hidden glare at Rip Van Winkle and getting her to shiver before hurrying past Alucard and towards Naruto. Greetings, my new master. I am Rip Van Winkle. You may call me whatever you wish. I just wish to be of use to you, Rip Van Winkle said as she kneeled down on one knee before Naruto, her hand stretched out to him while her musket rested against her on her shoulder. And nice to meet you, Rip, as well, he said, nervously shaking her hand with a smile which made her visibly relax a bit. Both Yumiko and Rip Van Winkle are bound the same way we are. They are to serve you first and foremost and cannot disobey. If we are busy dealing with opponents or lending you our strength, then they too will defend and protect you, Alucard said as she stood up, the building she was working finished and all the fire in the area put out. For now you have been awake with us for too long, Anderson said as he patted Naruto's head with a kind smile. You must rest and ready yourself for tomorrow. Both Yumiko and Rip Van Winkle will meet your mother then as well while we explain more of what is to come, he said, gently picking Naruto up before a door to a nearby building opened up. Shall I come with you, Father Anderson? Yumiko asked as Anderson shook his head. No need, he's already well on his way to sleep, Anderson said with a chuckle as they could see Naruto's eyes struggling to stay open. Alucard could only smirk, giving Naruto a wave that he sleepily returned before Anderson walked him fully inside. What an interesting master, he might be even more interesting than Integra, she thought before frowning at the thought of her and Sarah's waiting for her. I can easily allow you to visit them. Let me have more leeway around here and I promise my powers will allow the boy to shift between this world and your old one. A voice spoke out from Alucard's shadow, getting her to glare at it. Silence, you abomination. You're lucky you can't be fully absorbed or you'd be gone by now, she hissed in her mind as the voice laughed. It's not like it would be a danger to him, with only 5 souls and a strong devotion to being beside the mother he lost and was given again, he will surely not lose sense of himself. Plus, like you all, I am bound to obey. To think that woman's work would be that strong, it said before Alucard stomped on her shadow, making it yelp in pain. Silence. I will not risk it until I am certain he can handle his new power. Now be quiet or else I'll bury you deeper, Alucard commanded as the voice was silenced. Rest well, master, we will speak more tomorrow morning, Alucard said softly as she continued her work on cleaning up. Next morning, as Naruto woke up, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, he was a bit nervous to get out of bed given this place was not one he knew and his mother was not here. Do not worry, Naruto, you will be fine. You need to eat and wash up. I'm sure that Danzo has people waiting for you to help you until your mother returns, Alucard said in his head as Naruto nodded and got out of bed, noticing a pile of folded clothes on a nearby nightstand. Please change into these, your old clothes were disposed of due to you outgrowing them, a note on top of the pile said as Naruto listened to the note, changing out of the light blue pajamas he was given last night and changed into the simple black t-shirt that bore the Uzumaki swirl on the front of it and a pair of blue shorts along with some indoor sandals. As he nervously opened the door he was met with two men, one of which smiled at him. The first man looked rather odd. He was fairly tall with fair skin and short spiky dull black hair. His face, save for his nose and mouth, were covered with a mask that had what he figured to be glasses built into it. He was also wearing a short black jacket with red straps, another long-sleeved black jacket under it, a pair of black pants and black gloves. The other man looked more normal with auburn-colored hair and amber eyes. He also wore a short black jacket with red straps with a red short kimono under it, a pair of black gloves, and dark-colored pants. Hi there, little guy, how did you sleep? The auburn-haired man said as he crouched down to his level with a smile as Naruto frowned and rubbed his arm. I slept okay. Do you know where my mommy is? He asked as the other man looked over at him. Your mom is at home. We were ordered by Danzo to wait for you to wake before leading you to him. For your stay here, Fu and I will be your guards, the man said as Fu frowned and stood up. Come on, Torun, no need to be so blunt, Fu said, making Torun frown a bit before Fu looked back at Naruto. Here, I bet you're hungry. Danzo prepared some breakfast for you while you wait for your mom to return. He told us that he'd get a message to her telling her you woke up once he meets you, okay? Fu said as Naruto nodded, making the man smile. Okay, so let's go get you some food, Fu added before Naruto followed the two men through the odd building. Where are we? Naruto asked as he hadn't seen the outside of his room until now. We are in the Root Organization's base that is built into the side of a mountain. It is also one of the most safe places for you given it is only known to those in it, Fu said before they arrived in a dining hall to see Danzo sitting at a nearby table while taking a sip from a cup of tea. Ah, Naruto, glad to see you are up. How are you doing? Danzo asked as he set down his teacup and stood up to walk over towards him, motioning towards Torun and Fu to get them to step back. I'm good, kind of hungry, Naruto said as Danzo chuckled and motioned to someone nearby who hurried over. What do you need, Danzo-sama? They asked as Danzo motioned to Naruto. Can you please relay to the kitchen that we need some breakfast made for Naruto here, have them bring it here please, he said as the man nodded and walked off. Come, sit down Naruto while you wait, he suggested as Naruto nodded and sat down with a frown. Where is mommy? Naruto asked as Danzo smiled softly at him. She is at home, I will send her a message while you eat breakfast, Danzo said, thankful that the food arrived quickly, allowing the hungry boy to start eating and the message to be sent out. If I may ask, how was your sleep? He asked as Naruto looked up from his food. Good, I met new people inside me. Two nice girls named Rip Van Winkle and Yumiko, Naruto said with a smile as Danzo nodded, noting that now 4 of the souls were named but the 5th was still unknown. Can I meet them? Danzo asked as Naruto tilted his head to the side. Why are you so curious, old man? A woman said as Naruto watched Rip Van Winkle rise up from behind him, her musket resting on her shoulder. Hi Rip-chan, you want some food? Naruto asked as he held up a spoon of rice to her, which made her smile and pat his head a bit. No, but thank you master, that is most kind, she said before she turned back to Danzo. And you better not have anything fishy planned for my master as none of us will stand for it, she warned as Danzo shook his head. After everything this boy has went through, I only wish to keep him safe and allow him to stay beside his mother. Plus with his new powers I hope to help him gain control over them so he isn't a danger to himself and can defend himself, Danzo said, unflinching under Rip Van Winkle's stare before the woman scoffed. So be it, but we will act fast to protect both of our masters, the one we inhabit and his mother, Rip Van Winkle said before she sunk back into his shadow. Danzo kept that in mind as Naruto continued to eat before the member he had sent to alert Kushina of Naruto waking quickly returned. Danzo-sama, Kushina wishes to visit now, what should I relay to her? The man whispered in Danzo's ear before Naruto perked up. Is mommy coming to see me? Is she? Naruto asked, excited to see him mommy again as Danzo looked at the man. Do we know where Minato is right now and if Tsunade is at their home to do her checkup of Kushina? Danzo asked as with Kushina secluding herself to Naruto's old room and not leaving Minato had requested Tsunade to do regular checkups on Kushina to ensure she wasn't wasting away. Which was ironic given he allowed Naruto to do just that without a care. Minato is busy with calling a meeting that you are to attend soon and Tsunade will be drawn to it as well. This might be the most opportune time to let her visit, the man said as Danzo thought it over before nodding. Be vigilant and ensure her shadow clone is up to standards before bringing her here, Danzo said before he looked to Fu and Torun. You two are to stay by Naruto's side and listen to Kushina in regards to things concerning Naruto, he ordered as the two men nodded. Mommy is really coming? Naruto asked with a large smile that made Danzo chuckle at. Yes she is but until she arrives you must stay around Torun and Fu as I must be going, Danzo said as he took one last sip of his tea before accepting his cane from a rude member that had it ready for him. Be safe out there Danzo-sama, Fu and Torun said as Danzo nodded and continued walking out, curious as to how this meeting will go. Hokage's office, council room. As Danzo entered he noticed he and the other elders were the first to arrive besides Minato who was busy talking with Kakashi who stood at his side. Kaharu, Homura, how are you both today? Danzo asked as he sat between the two. Fine Danzo though I am curious as to the nature of this meeting as Minato didn't tell the ANBUs anything about the nature of it when they were sent to alert us, Homura said as Danzo nodded. I believe I know the reason but we shall see what Minato says of it, Danzo said, getting the other two elders to frown slightly at before the other clan elders started to file in. So, what exactly is the reason for this meeting Hokage? Kaharu asked as Minato frowned and looked at the council. I'm sure you all felt the spike of energy last night and how dark it felt, right? Minato asked before Sume, the matriarch of the Inuzuka clan nodded. Yeah, it felt powerful and even worse than the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago. The Kyuubi felt tame compared to it, took me hours to calm down the dogs in the kennel, Sume said as Minato nodded. Well we have been investigating the source of it and have found nothing. We tracked it down to a forest patch outside the cemetery where what looks like to be a massive seal array was found broken beyond repair or being pieced back together to figure out what it was for, he said as Shikaku Naru, the patriarch of the Nara clan and Minato's Jonin commander, looked over at him with a raised brow. A cemetery. Was there anything taken from it? The fact a seal array was found nearby sounds dangerously like Orochimaru given his obsession with reviving the dead, Shikaku said making Minato sigh. Sharp mind as always Shikaku as one grave was indeed dug up, the grave of my son, Minato said making the council go silent. The topic of his dead son was something the council didn't like given their suspicions around the boy's death. Kushina was not known as the kind of woman who would ignore any of her children since she absolutely adored her twins to no end and was always seen around them. For her to allow one to die from starvation was something that was not like her at all. So you think Orochimaru did something involving the body of your son? For Orochimaru to sneak back into the village for such a thing is quite dangerous given he barely escaped the village the first time, Inoichi Yamanaka, the patriarch of the Yamanaka clan asked as to him it seemed a bit odd. We are looking into it but I called this meeting to get you all on alert. I want you all to search your sectors and report anything suspicious. I'm having Jiraiya look into his network to help track him down. If you have any news report it immediately, Minato said before he stood up and walked out, Kakashi following behind him. Do you think Orochimaru would do something this dangerous? Danzo asked as he looked over to Tsunade, the only one with deeper insight on the missing nin considering he was her ex-teammate. I'm not sure, the last Senju said with a sigh. Unless Naruto had a powerful Kekkei Genkai or genetic trait it is possible but given the lack of medical records and his missing body it is impossible to tell, Tsunade said as she sat up with a sigh. How is Kushina doing? Sume asked as, given the two of them used to be on a team together as Genins the Inuzuka clan head was worried about her friend. Steadily recovering as best as she can, but now I have to work to make sure she doesn't hear of Naruto's body being taken. Last thing we need is for her to rebound and spiral back down even worse. I'll have to get Neko to keep an eye on her again to maybe help ensure she doesn't overhear anything, as I doubt we are the only ones to notice the grave the Hokage's son to be dug up. We will have to somehow stop her from visiting the grave until the scene is cleaned up without shaking her up any, Tsunade said, standing up from her chair before leaving and the other clan heads and elders following suit. An Anbu following Kushina around could make her visiting Naruto become dangerous, but if it is the Anbu I am thinking of, then she might be able to gain some help in form of an ally, Danzo thought to himself as he made his way back home and then back to the root base. Back shortly after Danzo left, Kushina was all but running as she entered the root base, looking frantically around for her baby before she saw the head of red hair and rushed to him. Naru-chan, see, I told you I'd be back, sweetie, Kushina said as she quickly wrapped Naruto in a hug that he happily returned. Mommy, I'm so happy to see you, Naruto said as he nuzzled against her before she pulled away from him. Kushina, Naruto's room would be best for you to catch up in and allow you to have some privacy, since I'm sure you have stuff to speak of without being overheard, Fu said before Kushina nodded, standing up and holding Naruto's hand in hers before following the two men back to her son's room. Did you already have breakfast, sweetie? Do you need some more blood? Kushina asked as she had a kunai ready before Alucard rose from his shadow. Blood would be best, at least one feeding a day to keep his strength up, but I must warn you, my little master, Alucard said as she crouched down beside Naruto and got his attention. You must never bite your mother or anyone you feed from unless you plan to drain them dry, she pointed out, making Kushina frown at. Why is that? Kushina asked as her baby's new powers were confusing to her. Because if he bites anyone, male or female, who has been deflowered and does not drain them fully, then they will become a ghoul, Alucard explained with a serious look on her face that made Kushina hold Naruto closer. Plus, if he bites someone who is a virgin, that in turn would create another vampire, which we do not need running around, Alucard added as she doesn't know how much she'd like the prospect of more vampires in this world. What is a ghoul? She asked before Anderson rose out of Naruto's shadow. They are zombies created when a vampire drains the blood of a non-virgin. They are generally under the control of the vampire who created them, but are mindless beasts whose sole desire is to eat everything living around them. They spread and are a plague. We don't want the wee lad to accidentally cause something like that, Anderson said as he ruffled Naruto's hair with a smile. Hence why, if he is to drink from you, do it as you did last time. Let him lick blood from an open wound. His saliva will heal the wound and ensure no scar is made, Alucard said as Kushina looked down at her son, whose innocence allowed him not to understand the darkness of the conversation. My baby has such confusing new powers, will you both help me make sure he doesn't get overwhelmed by it all? She asked as they both immediately nodded. We wouldn't want any harm to befall him, so which is why we suggest you allow him to be trained, Alucard said as she sat down on a nearby chair, Anderson leaning back against a wall with his arms crossed. Training? He's only 7 though, she said, referring to how old he would be if he hadn't died at all, considering he looked like he was 7 now. True, but he is an immortal vampire. If he does not learn to control his powers, then there is a chance he might run rampant should danger come to you, Anderson said as while everything he was doing went against his code as an Iscariot with his new situation, he was to do his best to keep the kid safe and from becoming as Alucard was in terms of being a demon. I suggest you talk to Danzo about getting him training of some kind. Hell, maybe even a way to get him back into the world under a fake name, Alucard said as she pet Naruto's head while Anderson nodded in agreement. The lad needs to interact with kids his age, even if he is a supernatural being, Anderson pointed out as Kushina couldn't help but agree since she wanted her baby to enjoy his childhood. We'll talk more about this later, as you need to feed and I need to meet these 2 new souls you met, Kushina said as she smoothly cut her palm to allow Naruto to lap it up and feed from her. She couldn't help but smile as not only did his tongue against her palm tickle a bit, but all of this almost reminded her of when she breastfed him as a baby, and it gave her a sense of being a mother again. Losing him was the most painful thing that had ever happened to her in her life. To this day she still wasn't sure what caused her to ignore her baby to the point of him dying, as being a mother was her greatest joy. And the weird thing is she hadn't forgotten anything about Mito before his death. A part of her felt like she had been forced to forget, but another part felt like that was her trying to excuse herself despite the nagging feeling in her gut that she was right about being forced. "You heard our master. Come and greet her," Alucard said as Kushina watched two women rise up from Naruto's shadow. "Greeting master, I am Rip Van Winkle. I pledge my bullet to punish all enemies without distinction," Rip Van Winkle said as she kneeled in front of her while the other woman smiled and did the same. "I am Yumiko Takagi and my blade shall hunt all those dare target Naruto," Yumiko said, her eyes becoming harsh as her glasses slipped before Anderson slid them up, causing them to soften. "Yumiko was a soldier of my congregation and is very loyal. The other was an enemy of Alucard's in the past that he absorbed," Anderson explained, making Rip Van Winkle flinch it slightly. "Don't worry, enemies of the past shall be allies in the future should their views be forced to change," Alucard said as she stood beside Rip Van Winkle. "She was tossed aside by her former group, used as a pawn to slow me down to set up a failed plan to erase me. Seeing her failure and being lucky enough to survive the erasure of souls within me is enough to ensure she will work with us. Plus your seal is absolute," Alucard explained, making Kushina's worries lessen with a nod. "As long as she protects my baby, I don't care about her past." "It is nice to meet the both of you," Kushina said, getting them to smile and stand up before Kushina frowned. "I've met 4 but you mentioned 5. Is the 5th asleep or something?" she asked, making Alucard frown and cross her arms. "No, but until Naruto gains more control over the powers gained from us all, then it will stay bound, as its powers can be quite dangerous to him," Alucard said as Kushina frowned, not liking the sound of that before Anderson held up his hand to her. "Do not worry about it too much, Kushina. I promise he will not be in anger danger by it. Its power is just a bit hectic and he needs to work up to it or else he might get hurt by it, which is why we suggested the boy get training," Anderson suggested, making Kushina hug Naruto closer to her once he had finished licking up her blood. But before she could reply, a knock came at the door. "Come in, Danzo. You're just the man we want to talk to," Alucard said before the door opened to reveal Danzo, who was seemingly unsurprised at Alucard knowing it was him beyond the door. "Greetings everyone, how are you today, Kushina?" Danzo asked as he looked around, noting the new woman beside Rip Van Winkle. "Better now that I'm here with Naru-chan. How was the meeting?" Kushina said with a frown as Danzo's root Anbu had told her how Danzo left for a meeting just as they had been sent to pick her up. "Minato is on high alert for anything suspicious and he is having the clan heads stay alert and having Jiraiya look into Orochimaru, so good news is that they don't suspect anything from you. Bad news is Tsunade decided to have an Anbu to watch over you until they fix the graveyard and to ensure you don't relapse, which means things will be difficult for you to come visit unless something is figured out," Danzo said, making Kushina cling tighter to Naruto out of fear of being separated from him. "Don't worry, master. We have a way of getting to you despite the distance. It is a similar way of how we exit Naruto. We can travel to your shadow as well," Alucard said with a smile before Anderson cleared his throat. "Look, we wanted to talk to you about something, Danzo," Anderson said, getting the man's attention. "You are the leader of this organization, right?" he asked, making Danzo nod. "I've led Root since the time of Tobirama Senju, Konoha's second Hokage's passing. You could categorize us as a shadow organization that works to ensure the Hokage is keeping to his oaths to protect Konoha and allow it to thrive," he said before the tall man nodded. "Then you must be skilled, hence why we'd," Anderson said, motioning to the other souls inside Naruto, "like to have you start training the boy. Hell, maybe you can find a way to get him back into the world safely without suspicion," he finished as Danzo nodded while Kushina looked from Anderson to Danzo, a bit worried about what was happening. "I will admit I was going to suggest training after Naruto got settled in, and as for his re-entering the world, I have a plan in mind, but it all depends on if Kushina can handle it," Danzo said as Kushina tightened her hug on her somewhat confused son. "Depends. Will I still be able to be his mom?" Kushina asked as Danzo nodded and held up a hand to stop her before he opened the door and whispered something into the ear of Fu, who stood outside. "You see, I knew from the start that Naruto staying here would be temporary, and, while I admit I am quick to plan contingencies, it is always better to be prepared than caught off guard," Danzo said before Fu quickly returned with a folder of papers in hand. "Hence why I had these documents drafted. They are a birth certificate for Naruto under a new name," he said before handing them to Kushina, who looked through everything with Anderson and Alucard by her side. So you're creating a new identity for the boy. It could work really well given his appearance and age have changed, Anderson said as Alucard nodded. It is up to you to decide a fake name for him to be used around others, and as for how to keep you as his mom, just look through the rest of the documents, Danzo said as he sat down on a nearby chair, smiling as Kushina's eyes widened. Adoption papers. Official documents saying he was found in the forests around us looking for family. Kushina wondered aloud before her eyes widened. Wait, you were planning to have me adopt Naruto? Kushina asked as Danzo nodded. The official story will be that Anbu of mine found Naruto, passed out in the forest, having traveled on his own after the town he lived in was attacked. He will officially be documented as an Uzumaki, and I will suggest he be looked after by an Uzumaki like you, he said before sighing a bit. It will be difficult to get others to agree, but I will suggest how having you look after a child will do you good, and given his age and Uzumaki appearance it will help you recover, he added as Anderson frowned. But still, do you think they'd let her look after a kid? Anderson asked, given Kushina's sudden neglect led to the death of Naruto the first time. I hope that the suggestion of Tsunade helping watch over Kushina's progress with Naruto paired with checkups with Inoichi will help remove any doubts in her and help them see how good having her look after a kid will do her, Danzo said as Kushina smiled, tears falling from her eyes as she hugged Naruto close to her. Mommy, are you okay? Naruto asked, worried about his mom as she cried and held on to him. Yes, I am very okay, Naru-chan. Mommy is just so happy to be able to be with you again, Kushina said as Danzo and the others smiled at the scene. As for training, I can certainly get something set up, and if Naruto wants to go into the academy we can set that up as well, Danzo said as he and Kushina looked down at Naruto. Do you want to go into the academy? I know you told me when you were younger how you wanted to be strong like me, and she stopped just before mentioning Minato as a part of her wasn't happy with Minato due to his lack of reaction to Naruto dying. Well, now that you are older, do you still want to? Kushina said, moving on from the thought of Minato, as while she didn't like the idea of him being a shinobi, if it allowed Naruto to stay safe then she would put her worries away and let it happen. Yeah, I wanna be strong like mommy and protect her, Naruto said as he looked up at her with stars in his eyes that made both her and Alucard awe while Kushina nuzzled against him, making him giggle. Okay, if you can promise me Naruto will be safe then I guess I'm okay with training and getting him back into the academy, as I do also want Naru-chan to get his education, she said as she pet his head with a smile. It will take a month or so to get everything set up. I recommend slowly showing progress of more recovery, so by then I'll be able to recommend you. I don't think the Anbu will be watching you while at home, only when you leave, so Naruto will visit you in your room before returning with you if possible, and if not you two will just have to spend whatever time possible at that house very carefully, Danzo explained as Kushina nodded, willing to go through a month of this if it meant she could have her baby by her side without worry. Why are you helping us like this, old man? What do you have to benefit from it? Alucard asked as she sat down on the bed next to Kushina, frowning over at Danzo who met eyes with her. I help because I fear something is suspicious behind the death of Naruto, and after so many years as a shinobi I've learned to trust my gut when it tells me something is up. I merely hope to find out by helping Kushina since I feel she wasn't at fault for Naruto's death, Danzo said as Kushina held Naruto closer to her. I wasn't. What do you mean? She asked as she had been blaming herself for so long. She always felt like something had happened, but a part of her felt like she was just making excuses for being a potentially terrible mother. Kushina, for the entire time I've known you you've been utterly excited to be mother. The time around your kids as they grew up showed you loved them dearly. To forget one child to the point of death is not normal in any way. I feel you were possibly made to forget Naruto to focus on Mito, Danzo revealed, making Kushina widen her eyes as she faintly nodded. When you all eventually do take residence back in Kushina's house, keep an eye out for anything odd. I bet you all would easily find it, Danzo added as Alucard and Anderson nodded before Danzo stood up. For now, enjoy your time together. I'll get training set up for Naruto soon and run everything by you beforehand, of course, Danzo said as he made his way towards the door. You never answered what you benefit from helping our master and the boy, Anderson pointed out as Danzo nodded with a smile. I benefit because it very well could help clear my conscience if my suspicions are correct. If they are correct and someone is behind this, the person I believe is behind it, then I can somewhat atone for their actions by bringing them down. Danzo finished before he headed out of the room to leave Kushina to time alone with her son, something he hoped to allow to continue on her own in the future. 1 month later, Kushina watched, somewhat worried as she watched Naruto standing in Danzo's training grounds. For the last few weeks she had allowed her son to train with Danzo under her watch, and while originally it was just to get a feel for his level, they were both surprised just how high it was. It started with him throwing training shuriken, which were made out of highly dense foam to weigh the same as normal shuriken. They were only meant to bounce off the target if Naruto had been able to hit it, and boy did he hit it. The strength behind Naruto's throw had been able to destroy the target and embed the shuriken deep into the wall behind it. When asked about it, Alucard merely said that it was to be expected from a vampire. Not only was his strength immense, but so was his speed and reflexes. He could run faster than anyone could track, running from one point to another in an instant without any trouble. He was also able to react to things the instant they happened, such as training shuriken tossed at him, even when with her approval they started throwing them faster. At first it worried her that he'd get dangerous attention because of it, but the souls within Naruto all assured her they'd hold his power back to reasonable levels once in the academy. Alucard though refused to not allow him to be top of the class, given her pride made it like that. "Naru-chan, don't overwork yourself, sweetie," Kushina called out with a frown, her motherly instincts not wanting him to work too hard. "Oh master, you are too cute. This is not nearly anything that could tire out Naru-chan," Alucard said, having taken to using her name for Naruto as she too found it cute for him. The boy has too much energy to tire from this, but he shows great potential in controlling the speed and strength gained from us all. Our powers will be a work in progress, mainly due to their contrast," Anderson said as Kushina nodded. Their powers at first had surprised and slightly worried her. Alucard had control over shadows, able to transform them into things like centipedes, bats, and even a hound which she called Baskerville, who Kushina was thankful was well behaved and seemed to like Naruto. She also could allow Naruto to phase through solid objects, which he said tickled, and regenerate any wound given to him. Although she asked not to see that last part as she didn't want to see her baby hurt. While Alucard's powers were much darker, Anderson's were the opposite side of the spectrum apparently. Anderson claimed himself to be a monster of God, and his powers were to reflect that. He could summon countless blades called bayonets and summon pages of what he called scriptures that could do things such as create barriers, bind, and even transport him places. His true power came from an item he called the Nail of Helena, that had bound with his soul and gave him holy power. He said that it enhanced his speed, strength, regeneration, and endurance, along with granting him the power to create holy vines and holy fire. While Alucard didn't like Anderson's powers, she at least agreed to allow Naruto to learn to use it, given she wanted him to use everything in his arsenal when fighting. Though both Alucard and Anderson said it would still be some time before the fifth soul could be safely revealed. Yumiko and Rip Van Winkle, while didn't have any special powers, offered their tools to him should he need them, as Yumiko's blade was in incredible condition, and after seeing Rip Van Winkle's musket in action made her believe her baby would never be defenseless. Kushina continued to watch as 2 bayonets slid out of Naruto's sleeves as he blocked foam balls thrown at him by various ninja. While he could easily dodge them, Anderson wanted Naruto to learn how to use them, since alongside Yumiko's sword they would be his main weapon. The boy picks up things incredibly fast. He learns best by seeing it done in front of him, it seems, Anderson said as he had spent a few days through each week showing Naruto how to wield his blades, and he was impressed by the progress. "Shame you didn't bring your gun with you, Alucard," Anderson pointed out, making the vampire grit her teeth and glare at Anderson, as he had a habit of pointing it out whenever Naruto trained with his weapon. In due time, Anderson, just you watch, Alucard growled back before Naruto happily and excitedly ran towards them, the bayonets gone before he leapt at his mother. "Mommy, did you see me? Did I do good?" Naruto asked, looking up at her with large eyes that made Kushina smile as she kissed his forehead. "You did great as always, Naru-chan. I know you will do amazingly at the academy," she said, as while she still had her worries she felt he'd be fine. A month had passed, and while they couldn't spend too much time together due to the Anbu watching her closer than expected, they had been able to still spend some time together to feed and allow her to hear about his day. She had worked hard to ensure she showed progress in recovery, going out of her room more when Minato was out of the house and spending more time with Mito, as despite everything she still tried to spend time with her daughter, not wanting to lose another child. She was thankful her daughter was so understanding, as they even had a nice heart-to-heart about missing Naruto that made Kushina want to tell her about Naruto but chose not to, given the can of worms that would open. "Yes, you will definitely surprise them," Danzo said as he walked in with a smile, Fu and Torun by his side, as Kushina perked up a bit as he told her that he should be getting the news of whether or not he felt the adoption plan could work. "So, any news, Danzo?" Kushina asked, making the man chuckle and nod. "Yes, I've heard good things from my sources. They said Tsunade believes you are recovering nicely, hence the lack of Anbu watching over you these past week. I have things set up. All that is needed is for my men to transport Naruto out into the forest to come back with him. If everything goes well, Naruto should be yours again in a matter of a couple days," Danzo said, making Kushina smile massively and hug Naruto tightly. "I doubt Minato will try to stop any of this, but you still must be careful," he added before turning to Naruto once he was out of his mother's tight hug. "Now Naruto, you remember what we told you before, right?" Danzo asked as Naruto nodded and looked up at him. "Yes," Naruto said with a happy nod. "My fake name is Menma and I must be careful," he added as Danzo nodded while Alucard and Anderson nodded towards him. "Don't worry, we remember our part. Once inside the house we will look for evidence of anything odd in the form of seals or anything else. Due to our connection to Kushina and Naruto, we will be able to feel if anything attempts to affect them," Alucard said as Danzo nodded before turning back to Kushina. "Then you must return home to prepare. You will most likely be called by Anbu and escorted to the Hokage's office. You know what you must do then, right?" Danzo asked before Kushina nodded and slightly narrowed her eyes out of annoyance. "Yes, I know, I can do this if it means I can have my baby back home," Kushina said, tears threatening to spill out of her eyes, as this was her whole reason for reviving him, so he could be with her again and be able to live at home with her like things were supposed to be. "Then I'll have my men take you home right away while I prepare Naruto. I'll do everything I can to ensure this works, so, for the time being, place your trust in me," Danzo said before Kushina nodded, her eyes showing a seriousness that surprised him before he mentioned towards Torun, who nodded and walked over to her and disappeared in a shunshin. "Well then Naruto, let us not waste any more time," Danzo said with a smile as Naruto nodded with determination that made him chuckle a bit. "Oh, how you will change things up. I merely hope nothing endangers you," Awakens Danzo thought as he and Naruto walked away from the training grounds to get ready for what was to come. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next part.